Recording is working. Cool. Hey, everybody. So today we'll be talking about two things. Just a kind of quick overview of the topics in P2 that you're going to need to really know to get into P3. So P2 to P3 grad topics. And we'll take a little bit and build a basic Express server because I heard some people talking about that. Make this a little bigger. So, like I was mentioning this morning, the curriculum is, I would say, mostly accurate as to what you need to know, what we're covering in P2, and what you need to know to get into P3. Like, it's mostly aligned, but I wanted to take a little bit to go through each of the pieces and make sure that you're clear on those, and if you have any questions about them. So, what you need to know to get into P3. So the first thing, and these are in no particular order, so this is not the most important thing, but the first thing I have on my list is Express. You can construct an Express server. That server will have get and post routes. It can return JSON. You can specify status codes correctly. Is this matching your understanding? Is this new information? Looks like it's kind of matching expectations. So yeah, so using Express at sort of a basic level. Yeah.
Like saying can construct an Express app with get and post. Are you saying that like we should be able to not have to look at any documentation, start from scratch, and be able to do this dynamically?
We intentionally at the Guild structure almost nothing to be like you can't look at any documentation.
Right.
And the reason is because like everybody always looks at documentation. So documentation is fine.
I just want to like, because I feel like there's like a level of like, yeah, I can do that, but I'm going to have to go and look like, or I can do it because I know it by heart. Like where in that spectrum should I be to say, yeah, I can construct an Express app?
Great question. Yeah, so for folks that might not have heard that, the question is where do I need to be at when it comes to an Express app between I could kind of clunk my way through it if I opened up some documentation, or I know it by heart and I could teach a lecture on it, you know? Somewhere in the middle, because we're not expecting you to be, you know, at the highest level with Express, and P3 gets into some more advanced Express stuff. There is this benchmark or challenge in P2 that's HTTP authentication, and that's I would say kind of at or maybe even a little beyond the scope of what we're really going for in P2. It's still absolutely a great thing to do, but yeah, you know, if somebody said to you, tell me how to build an Express app, you should be able to say, great, so you want to require Express and you want to, you know, set a variable that is the Express app, and then you go through and you attach different things to it. You can put in middleware and, you know, here's how you do a route, just kind of those sort of basic things.
So you want us to at least be able to identify the things that should go into it. So like app.listen is what starts up our server.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, no, that Stephanie's question was heck of valid, because like I always wonder how much knowledge you really want me to come away with, and so that makes sense. So it's like you guys want us to kind of get the basics, like, okay, I know this should be here, even if I having trouble getting it to work, I know it should be there.
Yeah.
That kind of, okay, no, I appreciate that, because that's what wasn't clear before.
Yep. Yeah, and with all of these things, so I have a list of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6-ish kind of topic areas. With all of these things, you should think of it in terms of a a P3 challenge may ask me to build a basic Express app, or it may ask me to, you know, one of the other ones is using JavaScript ES6 features. So arrow functions and template literals and bind versus call versus apply. You know, if there was a part of the P3 challenge that asked me to do this, to get into P3, you want to be able to hit the ground running Monday morning and say, I know what I'm doing here. I'm certainly going to have to look stuff up, but I've got the field. I've got, I got the, yeah. What did you say?
The skeleton.
The skeleton. Yep.
Got it.
So
Clear?
I guess just as importantly, you also have in your mind, you know where to go to get the answers.
Yes.
Oh.
Yep.
Like just as important as knowing just a little bit, like also knowing where to go to get the rest of it.
Yep.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, because the one thing is when you're doing P3 challenge or any of these challenges, you're not able to call on the resources that typically help people get unstuck, which is the coaches and the SEPs. You know, it's like, I've been looking at this thing and I just do not know why when I do app.get here, it's not working. Those are the kind of things that you want to have covered before you start that challenge, right? Is that clear? Cool. So next one. Can use Git and all typical shell commands for full stack development effectively. All typical commands, I don't mean that to be very ambiguous. There is that list in the P2 curriculum. There's that list of like, you should be able to figure out what a process ID is, and you should be able to, I mean, I don't remember what all of them are, but the basic commands for navigating around, for figuring out what processes are, killing processes, like those you want to have under your belt. And with Git, it's both knowing how to use Git, so what the different commands are, but it's also having the discipline of making consistent commits when you're working on projects and structuring your Git project in a kind of sensible way. So, you start off the project, before you've really done anything, you make an initial commit. Then after that, you might start working on something and you build out the kind of beginning of that feature. And as soon as you've got that beginning of that feature, you make another commit. And, this kind of thing, because this is, frankly, as someone who's interviewed now people going into P3 and into P2, this is something that we're looking for is, does the commit history tell a story of the development of this app? This feature was added, this thing was tweaked, this new thing was added, this thing was refactored. This isn't a hard and fast rule, but by and large, you can be using a single branch. There are reasons that you'll want to use other branches, and by the time you get into P3, you're expected to know how to use different branches, but you don't need to do any sort of really elaborate branching in projects that may not warrant it.
Yeah, that's what's one of the things I have problems with. Like, I got so used to branching. It's like I have this branch, and so as I'm working on this branch is a commit versus doing a branch and then doing commits within that branch and then pushing the whole branch up when I'm done after I make like that final commit. So that was one of the things I'm trying to understand. It's like you guys don't want a whole bunch of branches, you want a whole bunch of commits.
Yes, and for your software development skill, what I will say is you want to be able to. So, like one thing that I would encourage you to do, at least on one project, is create branches for each new feature that you're adding. Make a number of commits in that branch, and then merge that back in. And know the difference between a fast forward merge and a merge commit.
Oh, yeah. Say that again. Fast forward. Is that a new one?
Yeah. So let me type this out. can use a branching strategy where new features are added in branches and then merged back into the master branch. Can use either fast forward merge or merge commits. So who knows the difference between the two? Yeah, okay, this is a good thing to know. So I wonder if there's a way that I can kind of diagram this. So imagine this is a branch here, and we'll do it's a commit and a commit and a commit and a commit. So imagine you're right here. You've made these commits. We're going left to right here, and all of a sudden you want to add a new branch, new feature, and you come out here and you say, okay, so I'm making a new branch and I'm going to make some commits on it like this, right? So there are two ways, well, I shouldn't say two ways because Git is full of like a million ways to do things, but there are two principal ways to make a merge back into the master branch. The first way, and these are in no particular order, is to make a merge commit where you create a commit on the master branch that represents the merging of the kind of result of this branch. So, you know, we'll call it master branch and feature branch. So you create a commit on the master branch that is the merge. You've taken what you've done, you've merged it back in, you've resolved any discrepancies, any differences, and then there's a new commit on the master branch. This whole branch still exists as this whole separate thing, and its interaction with the master branch it's now committed here in this merge.
Is that what you do?
That's a traditional merge, right?
It's a merge commit. I don't know that I would say one
Is
is.
that the get, check out, and then the branch, and then origin master? Is that how you end up doing it?
Get, check out. Say it again.
Git push origin master.
Right, get, put.
So it would make a little
Yeah,
more sense
git
when we use the
checkout.
commands that would be used to do this.
Right.
So, for example, you have master branch, and now you've checked out to feature branch.
Yeah.
You've done some work on that, and you have been pushing,
Not
to
pushing,
the
committing.
or committing to the origin of feature branch or whatever, right? And then when you want them to be merged together, you would essentially push from the feature branch to the master, or what are we talking about?
Yeah. So this, I'll add this as another thing. Clearly understands difference between pushing, pulling, committing. I can never spell that word. Committing, merging, fetching, etc. So pushing and pulling has to do with a remote repository, and it's kind of a different question, because all of this stuff can happen on a local repository. It can be pushed to a remote repository. Right now, what we're talking about is commits and branching in a repository. So push and pull don't factor in here right now.
So we haven't, yeah, so we have our master branch and we have our second branch. And when you're committing on the master branch, even though you haven't pushed that second branch up into the master, what is your commit saying? Like, I have another branch that I've been working on?
Yeah. Would it help if we ran through an example with this?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, yes, yes. I'm really spinning.
Oh yeah. Well, we'll stop the spinning. Remind me later. So we'll call this Git merging. So who knows how to create a Git repository? Git init. Great. So we've got our Git repository, and we will create a file called A. So we've got one file, and we'll add that. So that's now staged. Make this a little bigger. Staged, and then we'll commit it. Initial commit. Pretty standard thing at the top of your repository to get something in there. So just for fun, we'll add another file, touchb.txt. Is this big enough now? And we'll add this again, and then we'll commit it.
AV is.
Yeah, so there are a couple different ways to do git add. Git add hyphen capital AV is, the capital A is all, and it has a very similar, if not identical, effect to git add dot. But these are the kind of things to do Stack Exchange on, because I always learn something about like the one edge case where git add hyphen A is different from git add dot. So for what it's worth.
The V, I guess is my question.
Oh, verbose, I think. So you notice when yeah, let's see. Yeah, verbose.
It didn't seem like it was saying anything different from what it normally says.
Yeah. Be verbose.
Maybe there's a problem it would like actually
Dave's
say something
manual.
additionally.
Yeah, I
What
think
is
that's
the
probably
meaning?
right.
I mean, well, what is
If you come out the verbose option for get add and it didn't say anything else, so I was wondering like what is that for? But all right.
Justin, is this just your, I feels like everybody who works with Git, and they all have their own way of adding that's like very like, they're like, I add with patch, I add with this.
Yeah.
Is this just your kind of like, this is your, you just always do AV?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, it is. And I don't actually remember.
Capital A, but you like you said the V threw me off. I was like, what does the V do?
Right.
Yeah, I can't tell you honestly.
It's
It was
you
just
use it, it
convincing
works.
enough to become a habit for you.
Yeah, and it's worth. I was wondering if it's going to be worth it time wise for us to figure out what it is, and it's absolutely not. But
Okay, we'll research it. Don't worry.
yeah, if anyone can find out what V does when you're adding, I'll give you a pack of Skittles.
Be the chocolate.
Are you using
Was that?
Are you using Z? Or are you
Yeah. Yep.
Oh, see, now you
And you guys know about the different ways to access help for, so there's man pages, and then there's / help, and then there's the web. Okay. Cool. So we added that. We haven't. So right, that's staged but not committed. So now we'll commit that one also. Added feature. We'll call it functionality B. Great. So we've got two commits on our one master branch.
What was
So
that? Get L? Okay.
yeah, does this tell me what it is? Yeah, so it's an alias to git log -- one line decorate all graph. That series of commands produces a pretty nice like visual terminal thing. I'm sure there's somebody out there that like knows everything about Git, You know, like Linus Torvalds is the guy who made it.
Yeah.
What's that?
Monica's a good.
Okay. Well, go to Monica for your Git questions. But yeah, it's been my experience that there are different ways to do everything, and you got to find the way that is like a best practice and works for your scenario. And
So as far as your testing, you want to see a specific way, or you want to see that we know how to get to the end result of it is?
I would want to see that you produced a Git repository that makes sense. So like oftentimes in an interview, I'm not going to be having you make additional Git commits.
Okay.
But if you submit a repository and it's got 17 branches, and the thing that you want me to look at is in some obscure branch, at some obscure, it's that kind of thing where it's like, okay, I think this person is not fully mastered Git.
Gotcha.
Versus if you have one master branch and you've just made commits all the way, or you've done a couple feature branches and merged them in, not hugely important. Cool. So now let's make a whole new feature. So git checkout -b. So this is a way to create a new branch and go directly to it. And we'll call this feature 1. Okay. And on my terminal, it tells me which branch I'm in here, which is kind of handy. So we're in feature 1 branch. So now we're going to make features, and in features, we're going to create a new file, 1.txt. Right? So that's what it looks like. This is in a new branch, so we're going to add that. And so say we make a change. This has some stuff in it, and we put that into the features file. That command line, you guys familiar with all of? Good. This is the kind of stuff that you want to have down pat for P3. So then we'll add this. I have a shortcut that's git a that just does that same add command. And git commit, typed some stuff in the feature file. Cool. So, it's not the most beautiful thing. One of the tools that I like is source tree. It's a visual Git tool, and it's just nice when you're trying to like really clearly visualize a Git repository. And what I want to do is just show the branches here. Yeah. So yeah, it's not obvious that there's like the master branch and then there's another branch coming off of it because there haven't been any other commits on the master branch. But you see here, this is now start of feature 1, and this is the head. This is where we're at on feature 1. So now, when it comes to merging, there are these two ways to merge back. And I wonder what the best way to see this. Yeah. One moment, please. Right. So when you do, so let's go ahead and merge the feature 1 branch back into the master branch. Yeah.
I think what's confusing is that none of it, well, at least we've never merged from the command line. We've only merged in Git, because usually that's when we're doing a PR request. Like, can you even merge on the command line?
Oh, you can. You
Okay.
so can.
So that's
And-
where I think I'm like, yeah, you have to merge and get.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I would say this is something definitely to wrap your mind around in P2 is creating a branch and the two different ways to merge it on the command line.
Okay.
So if we go back to and I'm gonna do something. I'm gonna copy this directory here. Temp get merging to temp get merging no fast forward. You'll see why I'm doing this in a second. Oh. So temp. Okay. So here we are. We're in the feature one branch. Let's go back to master.
Justin?
Yeah.
So that's, okay, now you're gonna merge it.
Yes. Now I'm going to merge
Okay,
it.
I thought I missed it. That's why I was gonna ask something I realized.
So here we are in the master branch. Feature branch has two commits that are ahead of master branch, right? And if we just type get merge feature one, that is going to initiate a merge that is called a fast forward merge. And what that means is, you see that fast forward? What that means is Git just took these two commits that we had made on the feature branch and it plopped them on the master branch. So instead of those commits being kind of isolated on that feature branch and then just taking the end result and plugging that back into master, we've actually fast forwarded master to be at the current place that the feature branch was. Does that make sense? So there are some reasons why this is handy. There are a number of reasons why this could be really annoying. So in particular, when you're working on a team with multiple people working on multiple different things, you making a change to master that adds a bunch of commits, potentially like before their merge is going to happen, can just confuse things, and it can make it actually pretty hard to manage all of the different branching. So so that's what the fast forward merge does. Is that clear?
It sounds so backwards. It sounds like merging your commits would be taking all the commits and putting it on the master. Fast forwarding and be like, we're not going to do all that. We're just going to put one at the end.
Yeah.
It seems really backwards.
Yeah, what it's really saying is you're fast forwarding the merge branch, you're fast forwarding the master branch to the current place that your feature branch is.
So,
Yes.
is this the opposite direction as a rebase would be?
Rebase.
Isn't that like when you want one branch to look like the other branch, right? And it's usually like I want this branch to look just like my master, right?
Yeah.
I think it's just setting a new start point for the master as opposed to, right? Like if you're doing it this fast forward, you're essentially just giving the master a new default point. Right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And then anything else. Now can you just fast forward with just this? And or would you fast forward like it stay consistent for all your kids?
Let me say this. Sabrina, the rebasing thing is another interesting question that is somewhat different from this, and I'm not currently clear enough on it to say anything intelligent about it. But just know that it occurs in a bit of a different context. But in both cases, you're talking about like, do we add commits to the master branch or do we do some other strategy?
Yeah, forget mine altogether. I thought I understood what she meant by rebasing, and I guess I don't. So I have to look at it.
So fast forward, all the commits that are on this branch get put on the master branch,
Which you can see here.
which is usually not a good thing.
We just shouldn't even know this.
Right. That's what it sounds like.
Well, here's the thing. You should definitely know what it is because it is the default of Git in like a normal install is to do a fast forward merge. And honestly, if you ask Puneet, SJ, Jared, and Bonnie, they might give you different answers about like their feelings on fast forward merges versus merge commits. So I'm giving you mine. So important to know both. So this is what it looks like. We had this other branch, but now both the master branch and this, I know this is small, both the master branch. Oh, I have the thing that Jared does. Jared does this. Yeah. So both the master branch and the feature branch are at this exact same point, right? So let's look at a merge commit, and then we'll get back to our list. So here we are. Yeah, same sort of setup. We've got these two commits on the feature branch have not yet been merged into master. And now what we're going to do is create a merge commit. And the way that you do that is git commit, no, not git commit, git, oh, so you want to be on master, git checkout master, git merge feature one, -- no fast forward. No fast forward. And because this is creating a commit by making this merge, so when we did the merge the other way, when we did the fast forward merge, Git did not need to create an additional commit that was like the merge commit. It just moved those commits kind of over to the master branch. In this case, we are creating an additional commit. It's a new thing on the master branch that represents having merged these things together. And because of that, it popped up on my screen here, a merge message. So it wants me to create a merge message. Like every time you make a commit, you need a commit message. So merging in feature one. Hopefully that'll do it.
That you just closed it right after?
Yeah.
Okay, because I thought I was doing that wrong.
Yeah.
Trying to go control C. But yeah, I don't know how to say that.
Okay, yeah. I didn't say that.
So check this out now. Here we've got the first commit on the master branch, the second commit on the master branch. We created this new branch, started feature one. We did some things to feature one. And then to merge it back, we created a merge commit, which is this sucker. And what it does is it preserves the branch as it was. And it doesn't do anything funky with the history of master. Because again, that's the thing that you want to be careful of, is not like kind of rewriting the history. And so it doesn't do anything with the history of master. It just says, oh, we've got a new feature. Here it is. And you've merged it in now. Is that clear?
Make it easier for like if you mess up, take it out.
It does make some like undoing screw ups makes it easier. Probably what's going to happen is whatever code base you're working on, they will have a way that they do things, and one of the things that they'll specify is we do merge commits, not fast forward commits, right? So lots more to talk about with Git, but let's get back to the unless anybody has like a pressing question about this. Yeah. Yeah.
Totally get that going to stuff I thought was more important.
Cool. So There's our little diagram. Up next, and it looks like we're going to get to Express another time, maybe tomorrow. This should be no big surprise. Can create interactive front-end web page using HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, which manipulates the DOM based on user interaction. So not just a static HTML and CSS page, but you've got some JavaScript in there, event listeners, using kind of vanilla JavaScript to read something in the DOM, like what's between these two tags, and pulling that out, and then inserting something between two tags. Like that's kind of the basic. When people talk about DOM manipulation, that's like the very basics of that. Yeah. So, for example, if you had a web page and it was a counter, and so you had a 1 in the center of the page and you had a button off to the side, you should be able to write the JavaScript that would, upon clicking that button, read what that number is, add 1 to it, and then write that new number to the HTML, to the DOM. Right? Is that making sense? And then, part of that is that you can create an HTML and CSS web page given a wireframe, which was even back into P1. So, moving on, async JavaScript. So, you want to be skillful in using callbacks and promises for async JavaScript, and you need to know both. And so what this means is you understand when they're used, how they're used, why they're used, and you can work with both of them. You don't need to, you don't need to be a professor of promises, but you do need to be able to work with them. And in particular, you need to be able to test asynchronous functions using Mocha and Chai. And if any of this is sparking for you like oh crap, I know absolutely nothing about that, that would be a thing to tell me so that I can tailor lectures and office hours and things towards that.
Yeah, this last one.
Testing async. Yeah, it's a thing. Like it's in the end not super difficult, but it takes a little bit of wrapping your mind around what's going on. On the last one being the testing async functions. Yeah, I'll put a little star next to this for my do a lecture on this. So next up, SQL databases, that you can create a fully functional SQL backend to an app using both PG and PG promise. So again, that's the callback version versus the promise version. And that you can create a schema. We all know what a schema is? Yeah. To model different types of data. And you should be conversant in one-to-one, one-to-many, or many-to-many relationships. And the last thing I have here, and again, I am not saying that this is a comprehensive list of absolutely everything, but this is when I looked over everything in P2, when I thought about what's covered in P3 and P3 interview and all of that, this captured the most important stuff that I could see. Can use JavaScript ES6 features. Oh, that didn't work. Including arrow functions, template literals, JavaScript constructors, which aren't necessarily ES6. The this operator, bind versus call versus apply. What Bonnie was talking about, so closures and immediately invoked function expressions. And then also, you should be clear on, so the words scope and hoisting should be like pretty clear to you what that's talking about. Namely, what JavaScript does with variables. It hoists them to the top of a function definition. These things should be pretty clear to you. And given the, my wife calls it a frinkle when you have that like forehead kind of like, so if you're having a frinkle about this, again, like pull me aside, request a lecture about this. Because this stuff, it's already relevant to the code that you're writing, even if you are not totally aware of how it's playing out. And so being aware of like what's going on under the hood is going to be important for P3. So that's it. And again, there may be other things. I'm not saying this is the comprehensive list, but this is this covered the big things that I could see.
It's enough to get you to pass.
Yeah, it should be. What do you think of all of this? What questions do you have?
I mean, it's all, like you said, it's all stuff that we have in the modules, kind of like flirting with, I guess. It's good to know that what is specific to, like, hey, you need to take a deeper dive into this area, and you don't have to spend as much time on this over here. So this definitely helps laying it out. It is something that we said that it was not at all clear that this was the focus before now.
Right.
So it is going to be a lot of changing as to what to focus on heading into the interview. But it's definitely valuable to know that.
Yeah, so for folks on the recording, Miles was saying this is helpful to know, not clear in advance that this is what needed to be covered.
Like
these specific
Obviously,
things.
all of this, I would say yes. If it was in the modules, we should be able to speak to it.
Mhm.
To know that this level, like in certain areas, we're like much deeper than what seems to be like on surface level of the modules. In other areas, we're not even addressing the module at all. So knowing that this is what the focus is, that helps.
You know, my hope with this is that it helps to kind of calibrate your compass with respect to what am I focusing on, what am I diving deep into, what am I not. You know, if I were a learner right now, I was like, what is it? If I were a learner right now, I would check back in on this list every couple days and see how I'm doing on it. And in particular, there are these couple projects or benchmarks, I think is what we're calling them, at the end of the list in the Phase 2 curriculum, that if you were to do these benchmarks and really like rock it, you would have covered many of these things. Like you wouldn't be able to do that if you didn't know some HTML and CSS and JavaScript, DOM manipulation. You wouldn't be able to do it if you didn't know how to use Git, like that kind of thing. And so I would, if I were a learner right now, I would find the nearest person to pair with. I would say, hey, let's crack into this project. Let's see if we can do it in a week. And then I would just really like go hardcore into, you know, one of those projects, especially that's like the movie search API or the movie search webpage. HTTP authentication is going to have a lot of this stuff, and it's going to be very useful. So again, another plug for pairing.
So you're saying the movie search is a good compiler of this short list? Be able to see a big picture and most of this list out.
Let me.
Application. Yeah.
I'm doing authentication right now.
So the movie search engine, I haven't like dug into this myself, but from what I could see, it seems pretty comprehensive. It covers a lot of things. It's a front end and back end. So if you see that you're at a level where you could get into this project, like you kind of understand enough to know, okay, I could write a back end, I could write a front end, and do it because it's going to be very useful.
Does that include, say I went to that today, right? And maybe I didn't do all of the things beforehand. I went to that today. If I could complete that project in a week, pair programming, and by some of which included looking up and whatever. But if I could complete it in a week, whether I did the previous modules or not, but did it by being resourceful and finding the stuff, would you still think I was ready?
For P3, would I still think you're?
So in other words, you could do the modules leading up to and dive into it, and then where you're falling short, stop, go back to the modules and re-up or whatever, or and that would make sense for like, okay, when you finally can finish it, boom, you're ready for 3. But what if one was to jump into it, pair program, and just be essentially resourceful in finding the information they need without going through the modules, but essentially using documentation and what have you, complete that project? Would they too then possess the skills necessary? One is more resource forward, like resourcefulness forward,
Right.
and the other is let me go through the modules and study and what have you. How would you weigh that?
Yeah. So Aisha is highlighting this, like, should I go through all the modules up to this and make sure I've got everything along the way, or should, if I think I can, should I dive into the movie search engine, do it, and pick up the things that I don't know along the way? It's a little bit of a subjective call. It depends in part on how you learn, but my opinion about that is, if you think you can do this and not get too bogged down with, like hitting a spot and being like, oh wait, I don't know anything about Express servers. If you think you can do it, absolutely do it. Absolutely do it, and learn what you need to along the way, and just come back to this list. And I'll put this up. This will be up on GitHub, and I'll link to it. Come back to this list and just check and see at the end, did I cover all of these things? Are there any holes that I still have? And between the two, I think you're going to be in pretty good shape for P3. Because this one, it's got a front end that makes AJAX requests. It's, you're making an HTML and CSS wireframe. You're implementing a database. There's DOM manipulation. You're working with PG promise. So there's really, it really, I think, does wrap all of this stuff together pretty well.
See, why didn't we have just 5 of those? So we have 5 benchmarks that increment, but like 5 that do that in different ways. So you have movie one, whatever, that complement all the skills you need, but then you get that much practice to do the full thing that many times. You know what I mean? So it sticks. I think it's when things break apart and they're small like that. You don't get to the big picture from way in the end. That a lot gets lost in there, and staying on task gets harder and harder.
Sure.
I mean, to that point, I feel like there's some things like I'm able to complete the authentication one. I'm not using any calls, applies, binding. I'm not using ES6. So it's like, to some degree I can, like, kind of keep banging my head and force my way through and still not pick up the stuff that they're like, oh, we get you to also kind of learn this going. They're like, no, I've learned some stuff before, and I was able to kind of find my way through.
I guess maybe would it help if the specs for doing those said requirements, use ES6. We're going to challenge you. So in the beginning, maybe you're ramping up in like what you would use, right, where you're at, where you're comfortable. And then the next one says, I challenge you to use ES6. I challenge you to use callbacks. Boom, boom, boom. And that's the implementation. And maybe there are links to specific documentation to help you convert that.
Like the goals in the project, where it's like our goal is to make sure that you cover this while implementing this project.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Cool.
This is helpful feedback, and I'd be interested in talking to you two and anyone else that has thoughts on this, because there's no reason and I apparently have full authority to shift around the curriculum in whatever way, because there's no reason things need to stay the way they are at all, and there's every reason that we should shift the curriculum to empower you to know where you are and what you're doing, and where you need to go as quickly and easily as possible. So we're a couple minutes over. That's it. So